While I spend a lot of time criticizing the Democratic Party, it is important to have some perspective. And last night, the Senate Republicans gave us some of that much needed perspective. The Senate has voted to nullify a rule allowing consumers to join together to sue banks or credit card companies, with Vice President Mike Pence breaking the tie. The rule banned companies from using forced settlements in consumer disputes. Such clauses, tucked into the fine print of contracts that nobody reads, deny consumers the ability to contest claims through a class action lawsuit, and can allow banks and other financial institutions to rip off their customers with virtual impunity. The banking industry had been lobbying hard to roll back the regulation from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So I will get a little more into the specifics of this rule that the Senate just nullified, but first I want to take just a brief look at the strong Republican resistance against Donald Trump. You know, senators like John McCain, Bob Corker, and recently Jeff Flake. These strong, noble men who have stood strong against Donald Trump and his anti-middle class, anti-poor agenda. What did these amazingly brave individuals do in this situation? Both Senators Corker and Flake, along with Senator John McCain, joined in the effort to give Trump a major win, even if it will hurt many of his own voters. Only GOP Senators Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and John Kennedy of Louisiana bucked their party. So when it actually comes to votes in the Senate, these three individuals who are part of the Trump resistance voted with every other Republican, voting against the rights of consumers and in favor of banks. Now, I will give John McCain some credit for, in the past, voting against the healthcare repeal. But that's just a tiny little credit that he deserves. When it comes to most votes, in most situations, he votes like everybody else does, always with the donors and always against the voters. Now, the Democrats, surprisingly, all voted to keep this rule. So here is one situation where the Democratic Party is clearly superior to the Republican Party. Now, you could argue that maybe that's just because Donald Trump's in the White House and they don't want to be seen as voting with Donald Trump. But whatever the reasoning, I don't care. They voted to keep the rule while all the Republicans voted to get rid of it. So that shows you right there who, in most cases, is most likely to be with the voters as opposed to who's going to be against the voters. Now, why were the banks lobbying so hard for this? As the federal judge Richard Posner of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals once wrote in a ruling, the realistic alternative to a class action is not 17 million individual suits, but 0 individual suits, as only a lunatic or fanatic sues for $30. In other words, individuals don't sue a bank for a small amount of money, but if the bank happens to screw a bunch of its customers out of that small amount of money, then those customers could all band together and file a class action lawsuit. But now, with the nullifying of this rule, they can no longer do that. And the bank is relying on the fact that people are not going to pay their lawyer thousands of dollars just to get back the $30 that's owed to them. So this vote to me really shows the divide between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Yes, both parties are largely bought by their big donors, but the Republican Party is just so brazen about it. They will never, in any case, vote for the best interests of the consumer over the best interests of a bank or really any big donor. And you can see that when you look at their votes. So you have to keep in mind, the Democratic Party put in place the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That was under Obama and largely pushed by Elizabeth Warren. This was a measure to protect the best interests of consumers over the profits of big banks. And now the Republican Party is doing their work to undermine those protections. So yes, there is a difference between the Democratic Party and the Republicans, and it's not just on social issues.